I don't know what it is about 5 inches, but 5 inches is there's just something really satisfying.
I just want the smallest package that gives me the actual most fun and satisfaction of
5 inches. I love 5
millimeters.
inches. I got it. Y'all can just stare at my ass here for just.
Hey, woo woo! Bob likes the small packages. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Michael Rollins Show, where today we are going to talk design with Bob Roogi and some guy named Tommy. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Great.
Very good. So let's just jump right into it. Remote ID, it's the official legislation just dropped a few days ago. And let's just really briefly touch on what it is and why it impacts FPV.
And before we do that, can I just say, doesn't it feel like just a little coincidental? It's just like during the pandemic, like, oh, we'll just slide this in real quick. Oh, boy, you guys are focused on here. We're gonna slide all these rules in real quick, and everyone's like, why? Wait, where did this come from?
It felt like the 10 p.m. press release on a Friday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. How convenient.
Yes.
But my bad. Continue.
Yeah, no. So far as I understand it, if you guys want to correct me, it's basically anything over 250 grams must have a remote identifier on it. They dropped the pre-built requirement, which is good. So you're going to be able to add a remote identifier after the fact. And there is no requirement for internet connectivity, which is even better. The remote identifier must broadcast what your number, who you are, and the drone's position in terms of GPS altitude, heading, and a few other things, I think. Speed. Thank you. Speed. Ostensibly, the idea being that if a drone enters into I guess a larger scale aircraft will know where somebody's flying. The proposal actually differs between Part 107 pilots versus hobbyists. Hobbyists are exempt in the Sub-250 class, and Part 107 flyers are not. Is that correct?
That I didn't know. Okay,
yeah. So apparently, if you're and I will say this, I am not 100% certain. This is one of those things I read on the internet, that if you are Part 107, you are not exempt from the remote ID specification on Sub-250. So
that
probably be
sucks.
something. Yeah, probably something I'll need to follow up on. But all that to say, that the rules are here. This is what they are. They go into effect in 2023, and this is what we'll be flying under. So what do you guys think about that? I mean, I feel like both of you have kind of been designing with that in mind. But what are your feelings on, I know Bob's going to talk about the number.
That's the stupidest number ever.
You got to talk about where'd you get it from? Let's just go up to that.
Right.
Hey, where'd 250 come from? They won't have a good answer.
No.
It's a super arbitrary number. Like if somebody came up to me and said, like, well, 250 times the speed of what potentially a drone could go, and you do the whole kinetic energy math formula and say this could really hurt somebody, then I'd be like, oh, okay, but it's not that. And I really don't know where it came from, so I don't even want to try and say where 250 came from.
I have a vague idea of where it came from, but it doesn't mean it's good. Supposedly came from some German war engineer that was like, we will make our cannonballs 250 grams because it's the borderline between, lethal or something. And
destructive
so that's
kinetic force.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
You know what? I'll tell you what. I hope it's that, because then we can make a case that our drones will never travel at the velocity of one of these cannonballs, and therefore you should raise it up to like 500. I'll take 500. 500. Everything's so much better at 500.
Everything's so much better at 500. Yes.
It's a totally arbitrary number that makes no sense. In my opinion, I actually think 250 grams is way too high for a safety factor. If they're going to go for safety. That's only my opinion. Well, yeah, of course. Of course.
Let's go up.
No, yeah, of course. Of course, 1 kilogram is probably the most reasonable number to go with because it just makes sense. Like 1 kilogram, it's a nice round number. Let's just go with that.
All right,
But like,
I have experience here that probably quite a few people do not, which is that in the early days, I flew my drone into my head accidentally. And
Please tell me that you're going to insert the B-roll of that.
I will, yes, I will put it in here. Okay, you will get to see me.
You have to.
I will. I will.
In fact, I'm gonna talk a little bit just to give you a little bit of time.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
So,
Go ahead,
ladies and gentlemen, this is Michael Rollins, showing you an example of maybe perhaps what not to do with the drone. Here it is.
Thank you. So, in that instance, it was, I don't know, the drone probably weighed roughly, let's say 500 grams. I wasn't moving super fast, but I wasn't moving slow either. It was in my front yard. I was very inexperienced. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I knew how to disarm. And it hit me. And when it hit me, it kind of hit my goggles because I was like, boom. But it just kind of knocked my head to the side, right? It was the props that would have done far more damage if I had actually not disarmed. And so I'm like, sure, if you were to fly a 750 gram drone into somebody at 80 miles an hour, that's going to hurt. But air mode, a hand caught air mode, 250 gram drone is going to tear you up if you biff it, right? I've seen these guys that, they watch Steel. Oh, he catches it, right? And then, dude, it bumps, and then the next thing I know, that thing has climbed their arm and has cut them to pieces. Oof. And so it's not. I mean, yeah, they're a little heavy, but we're flying buzzsaws, right? Like that's where the danger is.
At the same point, I would say that people watch pro skaters do insane tricks. It doesn't mean that they should go out and do insane tricks. Like, nobody can just do that right off the bat. Same thing. It's just that people are getting overconfident. They're very enthusiastic about the hobby.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Bob, you think it's too heavy. What's your reasoning behind that?
Okay, well, way.
Just turn off. Don't even listen.
Hold on.
No. Right, well, no, first up.
All right, Bob, we can't hear you, buddy. Bob? Are you there? Bob? I don't know. Tommy, what's your feelings on it?
I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like there needs to be some like foundational like basis to it. Like Bob said, like it came from this cannonball thing. All right, if that's the case, then great. Let's explore that a little bit. But just to come out with an arbitrary number without any other like scientific like testing or data to back it up, I just feel like it's kind of like you know what I mean?
It doesn't make sense.
Sorry,
let's get to the root.
Guys, I'm super sorry. I'm gonna step away for a sec. I apologize.
No, that totally makes sense. Of course, if it had any rationale behind it, fine. Okay, we'll go with that. Yeah. I actually almost killed myself with two quads. Like straight up almost killed myself. Like one of them was the DRL quad.
Okay. Well, see, now this is interesting. Let's talk about this.
So in the DRL quad, it's actually the Racer 4 or something, or the 3S or something. They sent me, and it's an underpowered pig. I was flying it around, and I was gonna just pass like way up high over my head, and it was coming around the tree line, and it's in one of my videos. Like there's tons of comments saying, "Oh, you almost killed yourself there." And it's not slow. It still goes like 80 or 90 miles per hour. I'm coming around the tree, and it's heading towards my head, and I'm like pulling up, but it's not pulling up. It's just like drifting down at max speed, and it just grazed my head as it went by. And that was stupid of me. But another time, I actually was standing in a shadow, and I was coming down in a dive from a tree, and I didn't see myself. This is with analog cameras, so I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see myself in the shadow, and I didn't even change what I was doing, and it hammered, the battery bounced off the back of my head, and I actually fell face forward.
See, okay,
Those
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Like, how often does it really happen where you are flying a drone and you hit somebody? I feel like
never, not once, just
right.
myself.
So my point with that is I feel like what they're trying to do is put this to whatever this arbitrary number, which is to limit the payload to be able to carry some type of nefarious thing.
Yes.
Oh, please, come on. You and I both know that 250 grams is plenty to do whatever we want.
But we didn't say that. We've not thought about it.
Right. Well, yeah, but I actually did consulting for like whatever, the Homeland Security, some random dude that was calling me. And I asked them that question, like, why are you asking me? You're giving me ideas. Isn't this why should I even tell you about this stuff? And he says, because you might have the knowledge, but you don't have the intent. And we know that. So you're fine. And so that's why I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. And they're saying, he explained to me that you actually need like 3 pieces of the puzzle to actually do something bad. And you only have one of those pieces, which is the knowledge. So you're a very low risk. And so that was interesting that he had an answer for that question.
Well, yeah, that's definitely comforting. But yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing is I would really like to understand what it is that they're trying to prevent by using this 250 gram number. And if there's really some solid foundation behind it, all right, then let's have a conversation. Let's figure it out besides just sticking to it and be like, well, that's what you guys are stuck with. Because
2 sticks of butter.
So, hey, whatever.
It's funny because, I mean, obviously everybody's paying attention to Bruce Simpson, and he, the thing he keeps harping on is y'all are saying it's a risk. There is no risk assessment. None.
Yeah.
Nobody has gone out and checked the validity of any of these requirements at all. There is no risk. Like, where we live, there are F-18s all over the place. We're not right next to a master airbase, right? We're super careful where we fly. Most everybody is. You hear those things coming from a long way away, and if you hear them, you don't fly. But a bunch of my friends, are F-18 pilots, and I've talked to them. I'm like, hey, what happens if I bounce this thing off one of your planes? And they're like, probably wouldn't be good, but it's probably not going to go down either. And, I mean, what we're flying, yes, it is carbon and metal, but like it's far less weight than a bird, a Canadian goose.
Don't they test jet engines by throwing a frozen turkey or something into the plane?
That's the windshields.
Those
are the windshields.
They've done that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, worst case scenario is, something happens, but then best case scenario is it's shredded and you have a shredded turkey at the other end.
Yeah.
Got food at the end of the day.
So here's another point that's maybe interesting. Now that we do have to broadcast our information and it is being publicly logged by whatever that's flying around, is it going to deter people from doing stupid things?
No.
Zero.
Because they're just not going to put the remote identifier on there.
No, anybody that's smart enough to know is never going to do something stupid to begin with.
Right, absolutely. Like you're not creating any barriers to entry from preventing anybody that really wants to make something happen.
Yeah.
For sure. So, all right. Well, go ahead.
Endless discussion. It's just endless discussion.
I think, and it's not, and just so you know, like, it's not just the FPV community, right? The commercial community is the commercial community seems to be divided between, hey, this is great because it's going to limit competition, versus this is stupid because everything I own is going to have to be replaced, and it doesn't make sense anyways. So it is definitely, and then God, don't even get me started, like the fixed wing guys and the hobbyists that have been flying forever, right? They're going to be.
It impacts like everything.
Everything.
If I had an RC car and I took it off of a launch ramp and it caught, all of a sudden it's a UAV that needs remote ID by definition, right?
You didn't have that RC car that would jump?
No. The one that had a little button that just did a little flip?
Yeah, no. It had a wheel on the bottom and it would just like pound the wheel into the ground and just jump like 3 feet.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're a UAV, and in 2023, if you don't have remote ID, you are violating the law.
Yeah. I don't, right now I don't know what the penalties are. I can go looking for them, but it's just, I think overall everybody's like, this
It's
doesn't make any sense.
it's
Well, it doesn't.
150K and 5 years in jail.
And if I
Seriously?
understand things correctly, wait, I'm sorry, I missed that. What? How many years in jail?
150K and 5 years in jail
Jeez.
per violation. Per violation.
Now, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but like the whole, like all of this is revolving around so that like the big companies like Amazon, Google, whatever could do their whole drone delivery thing. But what I think a lot of people don't even realize is that a lot of these companies are kind of backtracking and kind of realizing how huge of an undertaking it is. And so if this is true, it's just like, wow, so you guys are creating all this legislation, all these rules that it's going to F up a lot of things, a lot of good things for a lot of people. And these people they're kind of backpedaling now and not even sure this is not going to work.
So
That sucks.
and this is super far in the weeds. Like I said, a bunch of my friends are F-18 pilots and things like that. One of my buddies, who was in one of the branches of service, had for a while had been working up in the Pentagon, and he was actually responsible for building out policy for mass movement of unmanned aerial UAVs, effectively. And what he said is that the best thing they could come up with is that all these things would effectively more or less have to form like almost a mesh network, and let each other know where they are so that they can plan where they're going to be. But there were also a lot of other aspects in terms of where can these things fly. And they had decided that they can fly over power lines, over railways, over rivers, anywhere that people typically aren't. They were going to basically create throughfares for the UAVs. I don't know whatever happened to that, but to me, it almost sounds like some of that stuff got picked up and put into the original proposal, which is like the internet connectivity and the remote identifier. Now, whether it did or not, I don't know. But a lot of it would make sense given the parameters that were laid out in the initial policy. But once they're divorced from that initial policy, it just doesn't make any sense. So, But all right, so this is it. These are the rules we have to live with, assuming that somebody doesn't try to sue the government and get them reversed. And good luck with that. And
isn't race day quads?
Tyler Brennan. Tyler Brennan is currently
funding. He's funding the lawsuit fully.
His intent is to litigate the rules. So
awesome.
I mean, look,
really fantastic. Seriously, I can't. He should be recognized much more because nobody else is doing that. And there's other huge stores that have a lot of money that aren't doing this.
Yeah, there's so much personal politics and blood.
Yeah, I don't know.
That little thing.
Sorry, he should be recognized for it.
He should be. And I'm glad that somebody is trying to take legal action. So we'll see. What I'll do is I'll put a link in the description below. If you would like to see what they're doing, maybe contribute to them. So far as I know, that is the only planned litigation to this point.
There's others, but that's the only one that's fully funded.
Yeah.
I'm curious. We're all kind of, at least I am, stuck in this FPV drone world. But what I think a lot of people don't really realize is it's really anything remote control that kind of flies, I guess, right? So that's wings, planes, all of that is affected. And I don't know if it's just because I'm so in the FPV drone community, but I'm curious if any of you guys know if any of the other communities are kind of like, we're all kind of effed here. Nobody wants to fly at an FAA, whatever that is. That's no fun.
This would probably be a really great question to ask folks and say the flight test group, because there's a lot of hobby fixed wing guys there. For the most part, I don't know that it changes things significantly for the guys that have been flying in AMA fields, because I think those are going to be designated as FPVs, so they can go fly there without the identifiers.
Park flyers. There's a whole category. You go to a hobby store where it's like park flyer planes. Like this is, that's all. To me, you guys are effed.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's like down just a few blocks down the street, there's this big soccer field. I see people flying there all the time, and a lot of times it's not drones. There's a couple guys that go out there with these big planes, and they just zip them around, and you can tell they're having a good time. They know what they're doing. They're not going to be able to do that anymore, technically, unless they tack a remote identifier on it. So.
Yeah, I don't know. But whatever happens, if it happens, well, it's gonna happen. I just hope that this thing is like the size of this pinky that weighs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So I've actually I've been talking to CADX and trying to feed them ideas. And I actually think this can be kind of beneficial because they can make a GPS module that interfaces with the Vista. And so we get GPS and all these functionalities that can also feed back to the flight controller. Plus, we happen to get RFID built in as well. That would be fantastic. That actually would be a good thing. Yeah. But it takes DJI doing it.
But was it if I'm not mistaken, didn't the FAA designate a very specific list of people who are allowed to work on this? So and CADX is absolutely not one of them.
I didn't even know that existed. I didn't know they said.
They, a couple weeks ago, the FAA released a list of people who are allowed to work on this technology. And they are all very much like the Amazon people, working with those kind of people. Absolutely.
So we're gonna have to buy boards from Amazon to fly our.
It's Amazon wasn't one of them, but it's very much geared towards that, type of product.
So it's a Ponzi scheme. They're just giving business to their friends.
Right.
The government would never do that. All right, so everybody, we all think this sucks.
It does.
Nobody is happy with this.
I'm gonna get another drink. This is making me sick. Damn it! Just freaking.
Okay, so however, neither one of you has been resting on your laurels. Neither one of you has been in a place where you're you can pry my drone out of my cold dead hands, at least not publicly. And what's interesting is that both of you seem to be, and I know there's other folks doing it, but you two really seem to be pushing, how do we get into sub 250 but still have what we have now? And the other thing that's really interesting to me is I feel like you're taking these opposite approaches, right? Bob, you feel like you have gone to what is the absolute smallest thing I can get that flies like we're used to. Yeah. And Tommy, your approach has been, I want to take everything and get it to 249 grams.
0.9.
49.9.
Well, is anybody going to weigh the damn thing?
No, not at all.
And is it with battery or without battery?
I think it's all up weight.
It's all
up weight. It doesn't even say it in there? Is it
my guess is that they will take it as a unit.
I'm sure if it's all up weight. Hey, you know what? But if they don't do all up weight, I will freaking take that.
Yeah. Right. No, 250 grams without battery is great. That's basically what we've got now.
I can't imagine that they would make it like that. It would make sense to me that it would be all up weight.
Yeah. I mean,
but you also are thinking that 250 grams means something.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could go back to that.
Right, it doesn't mean anything.
Hold on, but here's the thing you have to think about in terms of enforcement. If your local and state police are going to be the enforcers, which I think is the intent, the cop is not going to roll up on you and say, "All right, let me see that. Oh yeah, you can take the battery off." They're just going to grab, if they have which, I mean, it's just absolutely absurd to begin with. But if they have the drone and they have a scale, it's not like they're going to take something off. They're going to take the whole thing and set it down. And then if you're 250.1, you're going to jail for 5 years. If you're 249.9, then you're okay. Right.
Can you imagine if that cop pulled up? First of all, if a cop pulled up and had a scale, I'd be like, for real, you have a scale? What? For real? And then if he got me for that 0.1, I'd just be like, asshole, fucking asshole.
Dude.
Fucking asshole. That's what I would say.
And I mean, here's okay. So by
What
the
are they
way,
using the scale for? Drugs? Like what?
I mean, it's like, hold on, we use this to weigh whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. Let me go get it. And by the way, like, putting aside the absurdity of a cop weighing your drone, most of them won't even care. They got plenty of other things to worry about.
Yeah,
than
just don't do anything
busting
stupid.
you for putting on spaceship goggles in a park and flying. Right? So, all right, hold on. Anyway, let's rein it back in. So both of you have been attacking this idea from kind of different directions, and one of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who said it, is that design is creation with constraints. And I feel like both of you have taken on a set of constraints that's very interesting. And I really would like to just dive into what's your process? Like, how do you set your constraints? What are your goals? And what is the approach that you start taking to start working on those goals? Tommy, why don't you go first?
Well, okay. I mean, maybe I should outline this by saying this latest project that I've been working on, this is really the first time where I had like some really solid constraints. Like this 250 gram rule is pretty apparent, kind of like everywhere really. Before this, everything was just more like I just wanted to feel a certain kind of way. I wanted to be a certain level of durability. And this is really the first time it was like, well, this is kind of a hard rule and I can't really do anything else to change it. Everything else was like, if it felt not quite as much as I wanted, well, okay, not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. Durability, that's kind of like everyone's own perception on that. So that's kind of hard also. But 250 grams is 250 grams. Mm-hmm. And it's, there's no other way around it, right? Yeah. So for me, it was really just like trying to figure out how can I get the best flying experience, which for me is 5-inch. And I think, Bob, you can agree. I don't know what it is about 5 inches, but 5 inches there's just something really satisfying about flying the 5-inch with that little bit of weight and being able to throw it around. And
100% not going to clip that out of context. I promise.
You know, it's funny. As that was coming out, I was just like, "Oh my god!"
I wasn't even thinking that. My girlfriend's been in Korea for the past 2 months, and I wasn't even thinking of that.
I find it kind of hard to talk about FPV drones without not accidentally talking about inches and not just putting yourself into this whole thing. Right. But hey, you know what? Whatever. It's the internet. Y'all could take it. Run with it. 5 inches. I love 5 inches.
Millimeters. metric system.
All right. I'm sorry. Let's pull us back in.
Right, I don't even know how to come back from that right now.
Tommy, what you're saying is you like the 5 inches, and it feels a certain way.
Yeah, so for me personally, and everybody is different, and I know that a lot of this is just maybe because like when I got into this hobby, a mini quad was a 5-inch, FPV drone.
Yeah.
And we just worked so hard at making this 5-inch thing work well, because before that, like my very first drone was this 10-inch ADS 400. I don't know if you guys even know what that is.
Yeah.
But like your parts selection was so limited. You could pick like 1 of 3 motors, and that was it. And then like your transmitter was something that was actually made for like a wing, so you kind of had to work with that. And because you're trying to put it into this tiny little compact thing, where on a wing everything's separated. So you had to learn how to use an LC filter. There's just all kinds of things to make it work. You know what I mean? And I don't know, like eventually you got it to this thing where it was flying really awesome. And I mean, you can't go against physics. Like something that weighs 550 grams, 600 grams just won't weigh the same as 250 grams. And if you want to take a scientific approach to this, like what we're talking about is, for me at least, kinetic energy, right? The ability, for me as a freestyler, like I like the ability to toss things and throw things. And at the end of the day, that's kinetic energy, which is, if I'm not mistaken, half times mass times velocity squared. Somebody just correct me if I'm wrong. So you have these two variables where the mass is being halved by half or half, whatever. I'm messing
It's
this up.
acceleration or whatever.
Right. And then you got the velocity, which is exponentially going, by a factor of 2. And so it's just a matter of like, can you play with these two variables in a way to kind of get you as close to it as possible? I'm not still going to sit here and tell you that it's going to feel the same. It's just physically, scientifically, mathematically not going to work out that way. But like, there's things that you can do to try to bring other characteristics out of it. Like, I'm working on this 250 project now, and one of the things that I'm learning is like, okay, it doesn't get me the same exact like throwability, but I can get something similar if I just stay on the throttle a lot longer. But one of the things that I can do is stop like at an inch. Like I couldn't do that with like my
different. It's different.
Yeah, it's different. And so you just kind of learn to make the best out of that, and you start to exploit these things that it starts to do better than the other thing, and it becomes a different thing to fly that in my opinion is equally as fun.
Now, Bob, your approach, like I said, is far different. I mean, you showed me, and if I can't talk about this, tell me not.
No, you can talk. It's fine.
So you showed me this video. Now it's DVR, goggle DVR.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. You can put it in here.
Okay, so I watched this, and even though it said 1S, 55 gram?
55 gram 3-inch.
55 gram 3-inch. It flew like if you had handed me that and said this is my highly tuned 5-inch, I would have been like, oh, it flies really well.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling that you can get that kind of performance out of a stick of gum, like a bubblegum sized battery. It's ridiculous. We're all for some reason obsessed with the microscopic ability to fly around a mosquito. Like we all want to fly around a mosquito, like a whoop that's a mosquito size. And I just want the smallest package that gives me the actual most fun and satisfaction of flight that I can get. And it just evolved to this point where I've just kind of customized every component to maximize everything about it and really just get the smallest, lightest, least intrusive craft that performs as well as it could possibly perform with the technology that we have today. And it had nothing to do with weight, had nothing to do with anything else. Just the fact that I'm trying to get the lightest, smallest, simplest item that performs as well as it possibly can. Because at the end of the day, I don't actually fly like for fun that often because it's just annoying to take all this crap with me. Even though I have one bag that's everything's in it, I just pick it up and go. It's just a lot of work that when I have like a little whoop or something, you just go. You don't have to think.
Can I derail this for a quick second?
Yeah, go ahead.
You just said something that really resonates with me. And you said you don't fly for fun. You haven't flown for fun in a while. Can I ask you when that might have happened? because I don't remember the last time I flew for fun. And I'm kind of just curious when this little transition happened for you.
Oh, when the transition happened? Like 4 years ago?
It's like when you started to like try to go for something and because like you're putting up content, I still have fun flying around. You do content times a million. Like I don't do what you do. You're like way beyond what I do. I still just have fun with it. But I also I do more working than I do just flying for fun, so that when I do go fly for fun or when I do need it, it's going to be perfect. Like it's going to be as good as it could possibly be without me trying at all.
Well, and both of you are in LA, right? Southern California?
Well, yeah, he's close. I'm in LA. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you like I can like
I can't even fly here.
I was gonna say I can grab my bag and head down and take a quarter mile walk and I can go fly.
Yeah, I can't fly anywhere.
But where can you guys just pick up and go fly? Is there something there? I mean, Tommy, you're always flying in like that RV, the RV.
Yeah, right. You're in like a.
That's because it's just across the street.
I was gonna say I know that. I don't know where that is, but that is right where you always are, man.
And it's gated, so no dog walkers could go there. It's actually works out kind of perfect for me because everywhere else around here, it doesn't matter what time of day or night it is. Somebody's freaking always
people
walking
everywhere.
their dog. Yeah,
always.
there's just people everywhere.
Always.
You know, and I'm the type of guy that like I won't push it. Like if I hear somebody walking, like I'll bring it down just because like I just don't want to deal with somebody misconstruing what I'm doing for something else that could piss somebody off. You know, so.
Yeah. Way earlier on, I was really reckless. I was way more reckless than I ever could have. I mean, I look back and I'm like, I'm a moron. I can't believe I made it this far and nothing happened. Like, I just beyond belief. It was so stupid the things I would do.
I look back on this one particular day and I actually hit myself like 3 or 4 days later, where I had my kids take Nerf guns and the game we were playing was I was going to fly around them and they were going to try to shoot my drone with their Nerf gun. And I look back on it now and I'm like, that is terrifying. And it was a horrible idea. And you didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. All right. So here's a question that I have for both of you. In this design criteria that you have, where does HD footage fit in?
Oh, man. It's a dream. It's a wish at this point on my size. Although I am planning on moving to a probably 4-inch and 2S just to be able to fit the Vista in there and not take it apart because it's kind of, I mean, I don't even want to do it, so I don't want to ask people to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's a struggle.
I'm like, yeah, let's take everything. I'm the guy that like, let's take it apart.
I got time for that. I really just don't have time for things to like break because I did something stupid or just, I mean, I've taken it apart and it's totally fine, but it doesn't, it's not like water protected. You can't like knock it around as much. It's just, I don't want to ask people to do it.
I will say I have put plenty in the water at this point to know that most of these things will survive a submersion.
Oh,
clean,
fresh water. I feel like I'm the king at that.
Yeah. I've put plenty of things in the salt water and it still survives.
How?
I'm currently flying ESCs and a motor that were dunked in salt water.
At least like 3 or 4 of these have been in water, and they still.
I have a question for you, Tommy. So there's a show on Netflix called Hoarders.
Yeah, they're inspired by my set over here.
What are you planning on doing with all that stuff one day?
Dude, that's just his backdrop.
The funny thing is this isn't even all of it. This is just when I decided to start holding on to them.
Well, constantly working to get rid of them.
There was this one point like where I was like, you know what? I want to start this series on YouTube called Throwback Thursdays, where I'm gonna go through one of these and tell you the story. But that's really what it is. Like each one of these has a pretty decent story, kind of, that for me is like my timeline of my FPV career. So.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna stop us right there. Is the Dugga drone on that wall?
Oh, absolutely. It is.
You gotta please pull it down. I want to see it.
It is up.
Maybe if you can't get to it, that's fine. But
no, I got it. Y'all can just stare at my ass here for
Hey, woo woo! Bob likes the small packages. I got such amazing clips for both of you.
You're welcome, Michael.
And timestamps.
Right here. This is.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, it's changed a little bit. The motors; these aren't the original motors, but this is the one that throws the Dugga. Which please remind me to wash my hands afterwards because
because it's radioactive.
Yeah, but no joke. Like on that trip, I literally threw I didn't take my shoes home. I threw a lot of clothes away from that.
Yeah.
Just because like we were fortunate enough to be able to go like really deep into, Chernobyl that like most people wouldn't otherwise go through.
I mean, you could have asked me for a lead apron. I got tons in my office. You could just wrap it around yourself.
And we don't need to. I will say this about that particular episode. Is a lot of the early Rotor Riot stuff was pretty fantastic. I feel like that was the best piece of storytelling to come out of that entire era.
Oh,
so
it was
so
fun.
It was so amazing.
It was definitely
Steele made like a documentary video where he's flying around and he put like a bunch of like info tips that pop up about the history of where he's flying around. I actually thought that was phenomenal because the footage was interesting to anybody really, and the tips were extra interesting as well. Like I think that should be picked up by like Discovery or something, just doing that around everywhere because it's so fun to watch and it's interesting.
Yeah, no, and that was kind of really like mostly the intent was just like how can we show the spot in a very different way, but at the same time being like educational about it. And it was absolutely probably one of the most memorable trips that I've ever been on, for sure.
Yeah, I can still hear the music. Like it just left an impact. All right, so HD footage, like, is that? I mean, I know the answer, but how do you get HD footage into what you plan to do? Like, Bob, what are you going to do with a 55-gram quad?
Oh, it's not HD. It's not happening anytime soon.
What now?
For that size.
You talked about going up to what, 4 inches? Is that the same drone and 2S?
Similar, very similar. I'm hoping to have that work out very similarly, but I want to keep the S level, the voltage low, and go for higher capacity so you get better flight times. Okay. And yeah, it has to have I mean, the payload is the Vista. That's all I got.
And then Tommy, I mean, where, subs to your 249.9 gram quad. What are you running?
Yeah, I got a little. I feel like I got a little bit of leeway. and like, I mean, like what Bob's doing, I think is amazing because that really does kind of pave the way towards pushing the technology to really have a good amount of margin. Yeah. I'm on the other hand, like I want as much weight as I can. If this magic number was 400, then I'd be building 400. I think a lot of that just has to do with my personal preference in how these things fly. But obviously my approach gives me a lot bigger window to make HD work. And coming from a time when literally like a good day of analog meant like you could still see half of it. Like that's where I come from. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like HD to me is just like, this is just the best thing ever heard. You know what I mean? Like people complain like, oh, I saw a little like spark and something, like, and it wiggled in the screen. And I'm like, that's great. Like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Yeah.
And even on this DJI stuff where like, I don't know, do you run, I forgot what it's called, the center focus thing?
Yeah, focus. I just leave it on auto. But hold on, I actually have to close this and rejoin because someone called me and my Bluetooth fell off.
All right.
So I'll be right back.
Cut this out. This is freaking a blast.
I'm glad. I'm glad. I was semi-concerned. I was like, oh god, I'm gonna be so dead.
No man, this is great. This is great. Have you ever taken a Geiger counter to that drone?
No, but on that day it had a reading. It had a reading. I forget if it was something to be concerned about, but it had a reading. Yeah,
but that drone was with you throughout the entire filming, right?
Yeah. This and another one. The other one that I had is up there also, but I have since then modified it because I did Drone Clash. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I did see some of that.
Yeah, so that's the other one that I had, and I don't know if you can see it, but that one has changed considerably because I decided to choose that one to modify for Drone Clash. Yeah. Which I'm kind of disappointed. I wish that kept on going because that was honestly, like, compared to any other event that I've ever been to, the funnest. Better than racing, better than any freestyle competition I've ever been to. hands down the funnest, the most ingenuous. Like it requires a lot of strategy. It's really engaging for both participants and people that are just going there to watch.
Has anybody ever gotten laser tag working on these things?
I
Laser tag.
thought that I swear
Someone
that
was
I thought like
trying.
a week ago that like Alex Greaves from IB Crazy, I thought he
Oh
came up.
no! There's laser tag. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. They have put it together. It's working, and it's like you have a readout that you have like 5 shots to like you get 5 balloons like Mario Kart. No, they've got it working. Yeah,
Dude,
it's good.
I want that. I want that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. So, okay, now both of you guys have been flying for a long time.
Yeah.
And Tommy, I know Boris was talking about you flying during the early days of
I saw that
before
video.
beta flight.
I saw that video and I was like, oh, he's still alive.
Yes.
Boris, if you're watching this, why don't you respond to my messages anymore?
So I'll tell you what, I have tracked down quite a few people, and he was the second hardest to find. The hardest period is Sharpie. That guy doesn't exist. He
still responds to me, but he just doesn't want to. Doesn't want to do it.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. But all right, so and Bob, you've also been flying for a long time, right? Like 5-6 years.
I mean, at least I don't know.
Yeah.
So whenever 10-inch was normal.
How much? So you guys obviously have a significant amount of expertise in this. How much of what you do relies on that expertise versus experimentation and iteration on that on your goal?
Depends on the application, what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say that it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like you kind of get used to certain things being a certain way, and so going into design, don't do that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, that could also just be enough to make you dangerous and work against you, because then in some ways I feel like it can make you, kind of not open to it actually working the complete opposite way of you thinking it would, I don't know. I think you got to take it into consideration, but then just also keep it in the back of your head that things can change. You might have a different set of lens on it, and it might not work the way you want it in a very specific way, but when you look at it from a different perspective, it actually makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and I definitely there's actually a name for that, which is like basically when you start something, you don't know enough about it to know what the rules are. Mm-hmm. And so you end up breaking them, and sometimes it works out. And I think there is an actual, so this actually happened. There was this professor, it was a math class. The professor had written homework on the board, and he had also written like a well-known unsolved problem. And some guy was late to the class. I think it was a graduate level class. And so he walked in, saw homework, copied it all down, and went and solved all 3 problems, not 2. And he really struggled with the 3rd, and he apologized to his teacher when he turned it in and said, this one was really difficult, but I found the solution. Well, the guy didn't know that it was an unsolved problem. And so he ended up, this went on to be his dissertation, was how he solved this problem. And it was some really famous, I don't know if I can dig it up, but there is definitely an advantage to not knowing what you can't do.
Oh, absolutely. I agree 100. Sometimes I feel like I wish I could kind of undo what I know just because I keep myself a little bit more open to things.
So this is actually a technique that a lot of biochemists use a lot, because they are trying to look for things. Mm-hmm. And we don't know jack shit about anything we're doing, really. We're just barely scraping the surface of anything. Mm-hmm. But it's really interesting, some of the things that they find, like when you read research papers and things. Because they're finding ways to actually reverse aging in cells, which is legitimately reverse, because they're finding plants that have enzymes that actually... Well, no, yeah, they actually have enzymes that add them back onto the end. Yep. So it's just it's ridiculous. So
All right, so that's would you consider the expertise a starting place? And so, maybe sometimes it's a shackle, but when you sit down and try to think of the problem that you're approaching, how much of that initial thought is bringing that expertise to bear?
I think it absolutely helps to have expertise, but what would separate you and take you to the next level is knowing your expertise and knowing that there's a possibility that what you know could be wrong. Especially if a certain amount of time has passed by and technology has progressed and you can look at things at a much finer level of detail. But I think it definitely helps, because if you know for sure, like, pairing up an undersized motor with a big ass prop is not going to get, like, there's certain things that, okay, those are just truths that we all know. But like, at a time where, like, man, I just remember, did anybody build a blackout?
I didn't have an actual blackout. No.
Yeah. Okay, so the first blackout was 2mm arms.
What? 2mm?
Yeah, 1306 motors, and 2S on 5-inch props.
Yeah.
What the hell?
This thing hovered at like 50%, like 60%. But I thought it was amazing. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, this is so cool.
Boris was talking about that, and he said, yeah, the drone flew you more often than you flew the drone.
Yeah, half the time you were just wrestling it, but you had so much fun just trying to keep it in the air and not hit the thing that's like 30 feet away. And it was just like the biggest rush ever. Like, it was like super fun. But like, and then things progress, and then like, one of the things that I remember too was, I don't know if he talked about this with Boris, because he's the one that made air mode happen, but the origin of air mode.
Yep.
Like, I remember specifically wanting to be able to stall, because I just thought it was cool, because we had finally gotten to the point where these things flew kind of decent and it was stable. So now, once you got that part, like, well, what else can I do with this? And so for me, it was like, well, can I do some interesting things other than just kind of like fly around? And I remember wanting to be able to do a stall, but the problem was if you got below min throttle, the gyros would deactivate and this thing would just fall heavy side down. And so to me, I was like, all right, well, I'll just muscle memory, I just won't go as far down. And then I remember having a conversation with Chad Nowak, and he was like, well, it'd be great if you had like some type of feedback, but like, what's the kind of feedback that you could get? Well, there's no haptic feedback, so the next best thing would be just hit full, all the way down, and you got that feedback of actually physically stopping. And then that's when idle up came about, right? And then idle up eventually became air mode, and now this, nobody even thinks about like why air mode even exists. You know what I mean? But I don't even know where I was going with that. But
well, no, but that's like, but that's the kind of like, there's expertise involved in that, right? It's like, you guys had been flying, y'all knew what you were doing, you knew where you wanted to go, and you knew why you couldn't get there.
And I would even add to that is like, once you got to that point, then it's like, okay, well, what's next, right? So air mode probably wouldn't have been something that we were trying to achieve,
right,
if we didn't even achieve stable flight to begin with. And when I say stable flight, just like it stays in its attitude and it does exactly what you want it to do without anything else, right? So
most of the time.
Most of the time. Yeah.
Right.
So, Bob, I know that your background is very heavily influenced by science. You're... Well,
you want to say that?
Dude, I hear you talk. I listen to the way that you think when you talk. Go ahead.
So, I am a dentist. I do dental medical, these schools, they don't train you for anything. Like, once you graduate, you're just barely competent. It's not even a joke. It's sad, really. You're barely competent. You learn everything through working and through other people helping you along the way. And at some point, and the best teacher is actually the person that just learned it and learned it well, because at some point it becomes so challenging for you to forget that you know so much and just put yourself in the shoes of the person that's trying to learn. And so it's like you're trying to bestow decades of experience on someone that just doesn't know and has like two left feet for hands, like don't know what they're doing at all, can't even begin to understand. But then as you go along, little by little, it just becomes second nature to you. And I think we both, and everybody that has the knowledge and has this intuition built into them, truly underestimates how valuable the experience is and how valuable the knowledge is. And one of the most important aspects, I think, is, sure, you can use all your experience and try to tackle a new challenge and a new whatever, but the most valuable aspect is, okay, so now I've tested something. How do I interpret that, and where do I go from here? Is it in the correct direction? Is it not in the correct direction? And also determining the next test, okay, that was the wrong direction. It seems simple, but when you don't know, when you're in the dark, you don't know left, right, up, you don't know what's what. So that's really where it helps the most. It allows you to hone in on what you're looking for lots faster, a lot faster. I can tell you that the past year and a half, I've been testing like every motor imaginable I could find for 5-inch, every size, everything, trying to figure out what the hell is going on with these motors. And the more I've learned, the more I learned that I don't know anything. Like I thought I had some idea, but it's literally like the more you know you don't know. There's never been anything more true than that. But my experience as I moved forward allowed me to at least start taking steps in the right direction. And at this point, I feel like I'm naive, but I know that I feel like I can at least aim pretty respectably in something just with respect to motors and how they're put together, just because I've tested so many and tried to figure out what's going on the same build motor from the same manufacturing line, just trying to figure out what's what. So it helps tremendously, but at the same time, it doesn't, because like Tommy said, you're in a box. Like you think that you know, but you really don't know. And a lot of the times I actually talk to people that I know that like ask me questions, and just from the questions they ask, like store support, just from the questions they ask, it's frustrating that they just don't know. But I ask them what they think about a certain topic, or I give them a problem and I tell them, what would you do? Just to look for an unbiased opinion of what direction. And most of the time it's not helpful, but sometimes you get something back from them that you're like, I never even would have looked at it from that perspective. And that's also the same when you teach students. Like when you teach younger students that are less informed and trained, it's just like you get responses and you're just like dumbfounded. Like, how did you even come up with this question? Like, this is most of the time just this dumbest question ever, but how did you even come up with this?
By the way, that's not just students, that's children as well.
Yeah.
My kids ask me stuff often, and it's like, where did that come from? So, all right. So here's a question I want to ask both of you. Are you a critical person?
Oh.
How critical are?
I'm a freaking dentist
that I work with. They're like, Tommy, you got to work with Tommy. Oh God, good luck with that guy.
God damn.
So I was pretty sure I would know the answer to that, which is you're both. I mean, Bob, I know you're critical, and
I live in the world of microns.
Much.
I literally live in the world of microns. It's like the worst thing ever. Everything, but it's also the same. That critical aspect is what allows us both to do anything that we do, and at least try to improve and get better and do things better. But we're never happy with anything. I'm never ever happy with anything.
Tommy,
and the same? What's interesting that you say that, because like when you say like you live in the world of microns, and that's kind of like your judgment point of like being critical. Mine is actually the complete opposite. Like, because I sit here and I'll say, all right, like, you know, this frame right here with this motor and this prop and this cell count at this weight flies freaking amazing. But does it though? Like, it flies amazing to me, and there's probably a decent amount of people that agree, but there's probably also a bunch that don't. And that's where like I try to like be as conscious as possible about you know my criticism, because like I try to say like, look, like this is what I feel is great, but you might feel something different. And we live in a time, and I'm speaking strictly about FPV, where we've got the technology and the different types of builds that really excel at very specific things. So for instance, like if you were to talk to somebody who's really into long range, well, he might have a very different opinion about a freestyle build versus the person that has a race build. And so, you know, I am really critical, but I'm also really critical about like myself and just checking myself about like, you know, like what I think is good and making sure that I convey that, you know, like instead of like, I think this is good, I say, I think this is good for X, Y, Z. And, you know.
Yeah, so, no, I live in the world of microns in dentistry. In the real world, I'm very practical. Even in dentistry, I'm very practical. But like when it comes to like tolerances and requirements, so critical where it matters, not where it doesn't. So it's like, I don't want to take apart a GoPro and put it back together. Like I don't want to do that. So I'm just not going to do that. So it's a very practical thing. But for the most part, where I know I can improve, I strive to, and I'm very critical of reaching all the improvements that I can get within practicality.
So this is, and now I'm officially diving into your psyches at this point. How critical are you of yourself?
You want to go back and watch my first couple videos?
No.
I mean, I basically offended everybody that ever watched the video.
It was so
like, I basically like got up with like a big ball of hate and like evil.
I could answer that easily by just having you ask me how long it takes for me to edit, shoot, and put up a video, and then at the end of it, actually make the decision of like, oh, do I actually really want to post this though? Like, you know, I'm super critical of myself.
So, but it actually, this comes back full circle because both of you talked about how important it is to get outside of your expertise, to question what you think you know. And I am suspicious that the fact that you are, number one, I mean, critical allows you to do the things that you do, but critical of yourself allows you to break outside of the box that you both acknowledge is a danger.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think part of that is just life experience in general, right? Like everyone has their own opinion. Yeah. They're neither right nor wrong, you know, and you just, I feel like you just kind of get by better in life when you realize that everybody sees the world differently, and it's just better to respect everybody for their perspectives and views. And it applies to everything, and for whatever reason, it applies to FPV.
Yeah, no, I will say that, you know, I think where both of you have arrived at is not the only path to effectively what you're talking about is questioning yourself, having that meta view of yourself to be able to say, I'm wrong, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if I'm wrong. And that I know there's a lot of different ways that can come out of people. You know, for me, it came out in a lot of ways through suffering, through getting it wrong so many times that I had to finally step back and think, hey, I need to rethink this. But it's a very interesting. I think there's a cycle to the way that you guys work, where it's like, here's the experience, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, please stop me. But here's the experience. Here's my goal. Here's what my experience says. I'm now going to iterate, and I'm going to be critical of everything, including myself, during that iteration to know when I need to break this cycle and bounce out to something else. Does that sound right?
Absolutely. And I mean, and I think this really only matters for like me and Bob, where we're working on something and then we put ourselves out there. And then it's something that somebody can kind of, you know, like purchase. Like, I feel like if you're just out there doing something for whatever in your fun, like none of this really matters, right?
Definitely.
That I feel like that's where this really absolutely matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But and you know, like the very first frame, you know, that I you know designed, I never intended for it to be somebody else to buy. And it wasn't until after I put that product out and I got the feedback on it that I was all like, it really hit home. I was like, people see things a very different way. And if you're going to make this something that some people could buy, you have to be open to that feedback, because these are the people that are supporting you and your logic behind it.
Making something for public or other people is totally different than making something for yourself.
I have no idea what you mean unless I post something that I think is funny. Because, what I do, I'm not building a product per se, a physical thing, but, I try to entertain, get people to think differently.
Oh.
And I know for me, it's super funny to me when I put out humor and it always goes poorly. Always. Like, I could look through, if you were to show me my percentage like versus dislike, I could literally point to the ones and say, I thought that was funny. I thought that was funny. I thought that was funny. Final group of questions for you gentlemen. Do you think that you are working towards a compromise, or do you think that you are actually working towards an improvement?
Are we talking about this whole 250 gram thing?
The 250 grams thing. Are you working towards a compromise, or are you working towards an improvement or something totally different?
Okay, I feel like this is really
it's both.
I feel like I'm working towards just a different way of looking at things.
Okay.
Because it's hard to, you can't replace, 600 grams versus 250 grams, it's just going to fly differently. And to me, it's more about like, how do we look at this differently, and how do we make this fun? Like, what is the fun in 250 grams? And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, what's the fun in that? It's more like, no, like, how can we have fun with 250 grams? That's where I'm coming from.
I mean, for the most part, one of the primary things we do with these crafts is capture footage. And capturing footage currently involves a GoPro Hero 8 or 9 if you want to get good footage. And there's no exceptions right now currently. So that's just not going to happen. So it's a huge compromise. But looking at the other aspect, which is just the fun of actually figuring out what is fun to do with these things, that's another story. And for me, the fun is actually being able to fly the darn thing anywhere, which is, because I'm in a city and like right in the middle of the city, is a struggle. And so they're just different. It's different goals, entirely different goals. If I'm going to be flying for pure enjoyment, then I have different requirements than if I'm going to be flying with the intention of sharing that with someone else, ever, of any sort. And it's very, very different. They're just very different goals. It's very goal oriented. I don't even know if I'll even consider doing something that's like 249 grams, because I think it's a moving target. I think as soon as we all get on the 250 gram bandwagon, they're going to change the rules. 2 years, 3 years, they're just going to change the rules to whatever they want. So it's like, it's great to do now, and it's going to be the hot thing for now, but it's not going to last for the long term. So
sure hope it
yeah, right.
Yeah,
but
if anything, it'll become more strict or less strict. Like, we don't know.
I mean, you bring up a really interesting thing too, that I think is a whole conversation on its own, is with the intent of capturing something. For the longest time, and I know this is going to so completely not sound like me, but I actually, a couple of years ago, before like I really got into this, I really did just fly for fun. No GoPro, no nothing. I didn't even bother putting a DVR in. And this is just my personal experience. I know that it's probably not for like everybody else, but like, for those couple of minutes when I'm in those goggles, it really was my escape from the real world.
Absolutely.
And that for me is first and foremost the most important. I know that it doesn't sound like it's me, because a lot of the things that I do is make content. I just came from a shoot today capturing this up, but to me that was just, for me, a very blessed and very fortunate thing that I'm able to do with this. And so, like Bob was saying, like it's just about like what's your intent and what's your goals. for me, it's not capturing something. At least for the project that I'm working on now, right? Obviously, there's other things that I've been working on, like a D-case GoPro that I know
You're
makes
gonna put
Bob
a D-case
lose his
GoPro
mind.
on it. You're gonna put a D. I mean, your intention is okay. 250 grams.
We even
I'm gonna
said
add
it in
this-
the
I'm
last
gonna add
video,
this
man.
40 grams. I'm gonna throw this GoPro on there.
You got me. So this is it. I've already
Yeah,
put a
of course.
D-case GoPro on it.
Wait.
You
Is
can't
that
help
the
it.
frame? Is that the
This
frame?
this is the frame. This is the frame. And literally before this call, I just got this put on here. And I was all like, well, I'm already not hitting 250 grams, so I might as well throw a D-case GoPro on there and see how this thing flies. Absolutely
That's
true.
awesome.
Absolutely true. But half of my flights, when I am able to, and this is very much true, like, especially after a gig where I don't know if you guys are like this, but I have this thing where like I can't go home or go to sleep really with charged packs. And so if I'm on something where I was taking like my little Ummagawd and I come home with a bunch of charged packs, I throw it on that guy and I just go have fun. I don't care about DVR. I don't have a GoPro. I still try to do all the crazy things where I want to hit a gap or whatever, and I still get stuck in trees. And people don't see it, but I don't care because this is for me. And that's the very specific thing that I'm working on right now. It's just like that experience.
If I'm burning packs, I always come home with one charged pack.
My man.
I never fly the last pack.
Yeah, never
ever.
fly the last pack.
Never fly the last pack.
So my daughter for Christmas, she had asked me, she made me this mug, and I'm not often surprised by things, but she had worked through a few weeks to find what my favorite picture was, and to find, she's like, Daddy, what's a saying you like? And so on Christmas morning, I opened up this mug of my favorite picture of her on the mug, and on the back it says, "Never say last pack." And it was immediately like one of my most treasured possessions. I might have gotten a little choked up when I opened it. I was like, oh, she knows me.
It's so true. And I don't know what it is, but it's just a universal thing from anybody that flies FPV. You just don't. I mean, you could fly your last pack. Just don't say it.
Don't say it.
Don't let it come out the mouth.
So,
don't be aware of how many batteries you have left.
Right.
At all.
So Tommy, it's interesting you were talking about that. So this broke recently. So if I'm flying and I have a marginally heavy impact, like say off a tree limb, it just stops recording and I lose all the footage for like the past 10-15 seconds. And so I for a little while I was like, I'm not gonna go fly, I won't have footage. And then my sons were like, hey, let's go fly. And so we've been flying for the past couple of weeks without taking footage, and it is so freeing. It's like you just, it's like all of a sudden I'm like, I'm gonna practice this trick over and over and over again because it doesn't matter. I don't have to go searching through this footage to find the one instance where I did it correct. As a matter of fact, no one's ever going to see it. And it has truly been a rather freeing thing.
It's super liberating. And, I learned this early on with the Rotor Riot days because, like, no matter what, especially when we were doing Rotor Riot, no matter what, it was all about the footage. Yeah. And that really took a lot of the innocence and fun away from it because you're sitting there and instead of just having fun, which could equally translate to great content.
Yeah, that's what Steel does. That's why Steel is so fun to watch because he doesn't give a shit. So he just flies.
Yeah, you need to get to that point where you don't care. And that's a big reason why I'm making this frame to not have a GoPro is because it's to have fun. It's not to go out and share your footage and sit there and edit like for 5 million hours trying to find that one perfect flight because you want to show it to all your friends. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because at the end of the day, that's why you post something is because you want to get the feedback and get the reaction to somebody. But there's also the other side of it of just really just having fun. And if I'm kind of tying this back to remote ID, fuck remote ID because that's exactly what this is fucking up. It's like,
Yeah.
I just want to have fun. It's not, but hey.
So no, I get it. Like ultimately, we all do this because it's fun. Because the first time you put on goggles and the first time you throttle up, it was a life-changing experience. And it everybody that I've ever introduced this to, the first time they fly with the goggles on, they are just blown away. They can be in the air for 5 seconds, and it just, they're like, I got to do it again. Mm-hmm. And so it is, what we do is pretty freaking unreal.
So I've because I'm always working, I'm always thinking about why the hell I do what I do. Because honestly, I don't know why I do this stuff, except that I try to explain it. There are a couple of research papers, not a couple, actually, a lot of research papers that talk about the concept of flow state, or just flow in general. And it's defined, like, by all of them to be something very similar, which is, it is when the task or activity or anything that you're doing is up to par with the skill that you bring for that activity and task. So you're not exceeding your ability, you're meeting it right there. And that's where you have that flow state feeling, where you're doing exactly what you were built to do, what you are able to do the whole time. And so this is the reason why, at least through a medical or dental career, you keep learning and you keep going further and further and further. And in that career, I'm getting to the point where I don't even do any general stuff anymore. I just do surgery. I just do like crazy surgeries. But it's the same thing with drones. It's like, when I'm just flying the 3-inch with no GoPro or anything on it, just actually flying for enjoyment, I'm reaching that flow state far more often than anything else. So I'm always like pushing it to where I'm right there. But the more experience you have, the more experience you know, the more you know how far not to go. So I don't actually like I don't even remember the last time I crashed a 5-inch. If it was in my Instagram video, whatever I did, if I even did, but I just don't push it the way I used to when I was new. But like the 3-inch and the little one, like I pushed the crap out of that. I mean, I fell off the side of a building the other day because I hit the building. The battery undid itself, and the thing fell off down in front of my foot. Really, nothing happened to it. I plugged the battery in, and I went back up the building. But like that will not happen with a 5-inch. It just, I won't do that. That's not going to happen.
So, all right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Do either of you have a last thought, phrase, challenge?
Challenge.
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 Throw a challenge down.
That sounds like
an
interesting thing at the very end of it.
I have a challenge. I have a challenge.
What's your challenge?
Let me get it.
Bob, don't show us things you're not supposed to show us.
All right. So I've been like low key. I mean, I've put up some videos trying to develop like something else to do with quads, and I've been trying to develop this little game which somebody else.
Yes, I've seen this.
Yeah, this game, which somebody else actually came up with this idea, tetrahedron or quadrahedron, he calls it. And these are straws. They're TPU straws that you stick a stick on the end of the quad, and you can pick these up with the quad. And this actually came from the show I was on in Croatia forever ago, where they had us build these massive things and then go around picking up rings that were hoisted up on like stakes. You had to pick up this ring. And this was the first time, actually, I had just come from Israel, where I was talking to the Israeli military, and like some SWAT team of some sort was like, hey, can you make a drone to put a grappling hook on a roof? And when they asked me that, I'm like, sure. And I was thinking of, okay, how can I cast like a laser pattern to be able to tell my distance? Or, I mean, I don't have sonar, maybe radar, something of that sort. That's going to help. But really, we have one eye, so we don't have depth perception. And the only reason we can fly FPV is because we're moving really fast. Yeah. So you get depth perception from movement. And so if you don't have movement, if you're trying to pick up something with one eye, it's hard. And you have to do it at speed if you're planning on getting it. Or you need 3D FPV. And in the show, one of the guys actually brought 3D FPV with them, and it's like an extension of your arm. You can literally just reach out and pick up something. But when I got back, I started trying to do that same game without that. And to my surprise, with a 5-inch that actually flies well, not this giant octo of some sort, I actually had no problem learning it within like 2 packs. And I got really good at picking up whatever I was trying to pick up and the qualities of the quad and how it was flying. So ever since then, I've wanted to develop that game because that was the most fun thing we did in Croatia. It was just so much fun to do this. And I've been trying to kind of capture that again, but it's really challenging to like fit it into what we do because it is something that requires, like if I tried to do it 2 years ago, it would have been much more difficult. Like now I can do it no problem. So I've been trying to get it to the point where it's much more possible, much more capable. And like it's so easy to make a game that's like 4-on-4 and you guys just steal each other's tetrahedrons like off the grass or whatnot. Or you can do search and rescue and find them in a forest, or 2-on-2 and capture each other. Like it's basically capture the flag. It's like there's so many games that you can do now if you can interact with something else in the real world on a regular basis, like an easy basis. And so in trying to fine tune it, but there's a lot of like issues with running. Like it's great if you use a Cinewhoop, but Cinewhoops are not made for crashing. So, and I'm not planning on building a Cinewhoop specifically for this job just so that it's strong enough to crash, because it's not reasonable. But like that's the challenge, because when you're low to the ground, things become sketchy with like a 4-inch or a 5-inch. And the best I found is actually putting 4-inch props on a 5-inch to do this, because you get much more throttle resolution and you don't get as much ground effect from the smaller props. But that doesn't work if you go down to an actual 4-inch quad, because then you're losing the weight, which then gives you the ground effect back. So it's actually opposite disc loading. You actually need worse disc loading to avoid the ground effect and actually be able to have fine control of your altitude. So I'm hoping to refine this game and get it to the point where it's like easy and straightforward, and it's so fun to do with other people. So much fun to do with other people. So that's my challenge.
All right, Tommy, are you willing to take on the Roogi challenge with me? And we will post it the same day that this video drops.
Get a chopstick, tape it to the front of the quad, and pick up something. Anything,
yeah.
Sure.
All
Here's
right.
the thing, though. That looks like that thing weighs 250 grams all by itself.
This
by 2023, that would be an obsolete.
It's going to be illegal, man.
It's a drone. It's a drone. It's a UAV.
Yes.
But that's part. Once you pick that up, that's part of the all-up weight. Illegal. Done.
Yep.
I was actually thinking if a cop was going to weigh me, I would just smash the quad into the ground. No, there's at least one of those pieces is going to be less than 250 grams.
Right. Right. So here's what you do: you put your battery and use Ummagawd to put on there, right? So that way, if you hit it hard enough, it'll fling off.
Yeah.
And now you're well under 250 grams. So that's I think we're onto something here, fellas. I think we're onto something here.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Go ahead.
Wait, hold on. Something I want to tell Tommy. So you were talking about the throwability or the flingability of a quad. It's a combination of speed and weight, right?
Correct.
If you take your 250-gram quad, drop the props down to 4-inch, and use maybe more kV on the motors or more voltage on the battery,
bring up the velocity.
You're gonna jack the speed up without adding more weight, so you can get more flingability out of the same package.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I was saying earlier. So kinetic energy is half mass times velocity squared. So there's two variables. You got the weight, and then you got the velocity. So if you drop the weight, you just got to make it up with more velocity. So I can get the same things on the lighter quads with that thing that I built. What I just found, which is absolutely in line with what you're saying, is that you just got to stay on the throttle and give it more speed to give it that fling. I will say, though, with the heavier quads, I could do this.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
But with the lighter quads, it's more like this. So you got to stay on it more, or something more of a parabolic thing. You know what I mean? So it's a little different, but it's still there. It's still there. You just gotta learn how to finesse it a little bit differently.
So Tommy, is your package more flingable than Bob's?
My package is not only more flingable, but it's way more enjoyable, fellas. And lady.
All right, and we're going to shut it down right there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming along with Bob Roogi and some guy named Tommy. We hope that you have enjoyed this, and we'll catch you next time. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Peace out, fellas.
Bye.